So what we have defined, we actually went through this exercise as part of SQL 2000, and we defined a series of experiences which map to customers depending on the organization. So when people are managing SQL Server, they experience different parts of the management environment. And we break those down. The first one is configuration, setting things like the service account, setting client and network utility settings, aliases, deciding which TCP/IP port to be on. So it's configuration. And in a large organization, there are people dedicated to doing nothing but configuring the SQL Server. They set it up, they configure it, and then they walk away. But in smaller organizations, that's part of one person's job. So that's, number one. Number two is what we call APIs, which is everything we do should be accessible by customers through APIs. So all of the UI that we build talks to APIs which are fully published, and we leverage them and essentially dog food them internally so that they are usable by customers outside. So that if somebody wants to build a competitor for SQL Server Management Studio, everything we do, they can quite happily go ahead and do and leverage the same APIs that we do or use different ones. So some customers will build custom management utilities, VB.NET, C#, script. They can do all of that. So there's a programmer element to this. And again, in a large shop, somebody will be dedicated to doing this. In a smaller shop, it will be somebody's part-time job, or maybe it's one of the developers who writes the application, also writes the management interfaces as well. Then we have raw management. And what we mean by raw management is things like backup, restore, security, permissions, and to a certain degree, design of tables and structures of the database. That's all the stuff that we do just really well and effectively in Enterprise Manager, and we've made it much more scalable and reliable in the Yukon timeframe. So that's 3 of the 6 experiences we talk about. Performance tuning and optimization is the next one. So when you have a system up and running, how do I go in there and how do I tune it? How do I improve it? How do I look at what the workload is this week versus last week and decide if my system needs to change? Another experience, again, can be a dedicated individual or can be part of somebody's job. Last 2 experiences are what we call operations. So operations is really taking something that you do in a nice, rich, interactive GUI and then saying, I want to go do that at midnight, or I want to go do that on 1,000 servers. How do I have that happen? I don't want to establish a connection to 1,000 servers through the UI and press the same buttons time and time again. How do I make that experience scale? And that tends to be something that happens in the larger organizations. Smaller organizations tend not to have that function in them, but there are some who have it. And the final area that we talk about is authoring. And authoring is writing stuff. That means writing T-SQL. It means writing XML for analysis. It means writing MDX. It means authoring SQL Server CE queries. So we provide a very rich environment to be able to do that. We have IntelliSense, we have projects. What we really wanted to do in the Yukon timeframe was make the developer of, or the author really, of these things that we support in Yukon on a par with what the Visual Studio developer has for VB.NET and C#. And I believe, for the most part, we've succeeded. We have a lot of ideas that we still want to do in later versions, but we've really brought that experience up to the next level. So you asked me about the customer, and I can't give you a short and easy answer, but those 6 experiences I talked about define the customer. And in a given organization, it could be a one-to-one mapping. One person has one experience. Or another given organization, one person could be the person that does all 6 of those things. And so there's an element of wanting to have it all integrated and be consistent for the one-person shop, but also there's an element of, for the guy who spends all of their time doing nothing but authoring, make that experience really, really enjoyable, make it really rich, make them as productive as we possibly can. And so it's an interesting challenge. Integration is one theme, but productivity is another theme, and sometimes those clash, and we have to make calls one way or the other.